So this is Nick Williams sitting here with Richard Barrett. Hi Richard.
Hello Nick.
So your latest book is called The New Leadership Paradigm, and I'm fascinated by this whole area of leadership. I've been thinking about it for years, but only kind of recently begin to kind of engage with it more. But you've been immersed in this area for the last 20 years or so. So, you know, I think most people watching this would probably bemoan the lack of inspirational leadership in the world.
Right.
So, what's your take on how we can all lead, really? What can everybody do to become leaders in their lives?
Yeah. So what I realized is when I first got the call to write this book, I resisted it a little bit because I thought to myself, you know, if we knew what leadership was, somebody would have written the book, would have all bought it, and they would be happy, you know. But I realized that, you know, there are 300,000 titles on Amazon to dealing with leadership. So I quickly realized that everybody writes about leadership from the levels of consciousness at which they operate. And since I have a way of measuring consciousness by mapping values, I mapped a few of the books of leaders, and I found none of them really, their values didn't map to what I call full spectrum consciousness. And so I recognized there was an opportunity there to, you know, to write a book on leadership. And what I quickly realized is that, you know, the first thing in order to be a leader is you've got to be able to lead yourself.
Right.
And
so what does that mean?
What does that mean to be? So for me, there are 3 stages of learning to lead yourself, which are actually linked through to the universal stages of evolution that apply to the atomic world, the world of biology, and now Homo sapiens. And that is, first of all, you've got to become viable and independent in your framework of existence. For a human individual, that means being able to master your subconscious fears to the point that they don't create excessive dysfunction in your life. Or, you know, you'll always get upset by something, but being able to manage that upset quickly, let it go, and then instead of reacting, responding in a way where you had the chance to think it through and respond with your own best interest and everybody else's best interest.
I'm just smiling. I talk about getting upset with awareness. So
yes.
you do it with awareness and you realise and you get triggered, but then you kind of...
Yeah. So the question is, how quickly can you get past that?
Right. So is that an important part of leadership in your mind?
It is, absolutely. For leading self, leading a team, leading an organisation, and leading a society. And I deal with all of those aspects in this book, but particularly leading self is, if you're going to get easily upset by and triggered by things,
because you're going to get kind of pulled out all the time.
You're going to impact all the people you're working with, and they're going to see you upset. They're going to feel these behaviours which are coming from blame and internal competition, etc., etc. So learning to lead yourself—that's the first thing. Personal mastery, I call it becoming viable and independent. The second stage is internal cohesion in yourself. In other words, aligning the beliefs of the ego with the values of the soul, but it's more than that. It's really about understanding what your passion is in life and creating the space in your life where you can live your passion. So that's internal cohesion. That's the second universal stage of evolution. And the third stage is external cohesion. In other words, if you're going to have an impact on the world, you're going to have to work with other people, which involves cooperation. And so to leverage your impact on the world, you need to be able to work alongside others who share a similar sense of vision and mission so that you can create a bigger force for the good that you want to create. So you know, leading self is about personal mastery, internal cohesion, external cohesion. Leading a team, same thing. Just an expansion of all of those aspects into a team environment. Leading an organisation, leading in society. All contain those same 3 elements, which really is about the evolution of your personal consciousness. Because if you haven't focused on yourself and know yourself, it's really difficult to lead others.
So it starts with self, because one of our mutual friends, Sue Cheshire, I remember her saying, or she wrote it in a chapter in a book she wrote, that she reckoned the first responsibility of a leader is their own internal work. Would you go with that?
Totally. I've been saying that for ages. In fact, it's one of my mantras. When I wrote my second book, Liberating the Corporate Soul, 15 years ago, I said, organizational transformation begins with the personal transformation of the leaders. And the reason I say that is that the culture of an organization, which is so linked to performance, is a reflection of the leader's consciousness. So if you want to improve your performance as a leader, you have to work on yourself and the values of your leadership team.
So how well is that received then? Because presumably to say to people, you've got to look where you're competitive, angry, greedy, where you're wounded, they go, oh yeah, I'm going to sign up for that. How do you deal with people's reluctance or resistance to look inside?
The point is that you, in a sense, you don't. I mean, you can't force people to do anything that they don't want to do. So my whole business philosophy, for measuring consciousness and mapping values, is to put it out there and see who shows up. Because it's really hard to say to people who are living in fear, oh, if you do this values assessment, or if you look at your values, for example, it'll show you exactly what you need to change, and it'll just make them more scared. If you say, well, it's all about you.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it is all about them, and so the ones who sign up are the ones who are beginning to evolve and open their awareness.
Right.
And in business, what happens is, people latch onto what works. And so the more and more people who set examples by working on themselves and then having huge success in their organizations, other people say, well, what are they doing? And they say, well, they're working on their own values.
So does that come back to us kind of being living examples in a way, for those of us that have been working on ourselves for a long time, to be able to show up and go, yeah, this is kind of what you can get to if you deal with your stuff.
Absolutely.
So one aspect of personal leadership and leading others is to be the great example. Yeah,
the real role of the leader, in my opinion, is not only to manage their values, but to manage the values of their organization. And that is actually, if you can do that, you can be very successful. When you look at what's been happening with Robert Maxwell, I mean, he has not been managing the values of his organization. What has happened? Chaos. I mean, in fact, his whole empire could be easily wiped out because he's not been managing the values of his organization.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Any other tips for anybody watching? Just, any other thoughts about how they step into leadership in their own life?
Well, I don't want this to be too promotional, but what I wanted to say was that, the New Leadership Paradigm is not only a book, it's a complete learning system, and you can download learning modules for leading self, leading a team, leading an organization, and leading a society. And what I really wanted to do was democratize leadership development, and so to make this available to everybody on the planet at a price they can afford. And as I say on the video, the introduction on the New Leadership Paradigm website, I say, if you can't afford it, we'll send it to you free. Because for me, it's all about the evolution of consciousness. And we really, up to this point in time, leadership development has been the privilege of the elites. That has to come to an end. We've got to democratize it, put it out in the world so everybody and anybody who wants to become a leader can become a leader and can follow a world-class learning system in their own home, on their own computer, which allows them to do that.
Brilliant. And what's the URL for that? NewLeadershipParadigm.com?
www.newleadershipparadigm.com.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Richard. It's been great talking to you. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Nick.